law of modeling, it's hard to improve when you have no one but yourself to follow. The most important personal growth phrase you will ever hear a good leader say to you is, "Follow me." In the Law of Intentionality chapter, I wrote about how in 1972 I searched unsuccessfully for people who had growth plans to help me learn how to develop my own. That prompted me to buy the kit that Kurt Kampmeyer offered and started me on the path of intentional personal growth. That provided a great start for me, but I have to admit that my early development process was hit or miss. I was learning according to trial and error. On the positive side, personal growth became my number one priority. I was learning how to choose books to read, lessons to listen to, and conferences to attend. At first I took a scattershot approach. I grabbed hold of anything that appealed to me. But I wasn't getting the traction I had hoped for. Then I figured out that I needed to focus my growth on my areas of personal strength, leadership, relationships, and communication. When I did that, my effectiveness in growth started to increase. I also started to learn how to glean from what I was studying. Resources have little value unless you can pull from them the essentials that you need. That meant learning to take useful notes, gathering quotes, and reflecting on what I was learning. I often summarized what I learned and wrote action points inside the front cover of a book that was significant to me. And it meant collecting, categorizing, and filing stories and quotes every day. I also put into practice anything I learned at my earliest opportunity. All of these practices became part of my daily discipline, and have continued to be part of it for the last 40 years. My car became my classroom as I listened to tapes and later CDs. The desk in my study always had a stack of books that I was working through. My files were continually growing. I was growing, my leadership was improving, and I was seeing better results professionally. On the negative side, I came to a realization around this same time. Personal growth without the benefit of personal mentors could take me only so far. If I wanted to become the leader I desired to be, and believed that God had created me to become, I needed to find models who were ahead of me to learn from. Why? Because it's hard to improve when you have no one but yourself to follow. That's the lesson of the law of modeling. Whom should I follow? I have learned a lot from people I've never met. Dale Carnegie taught me people skills when I read How to Win Friends and Influence People in junior high school. James Allen helped me understand that my attitude and the way that I thought would impact the course of my life when I read As a Man Thinketh. And Oswald Sanders revealed the importance of leadership to me for the first time when I read his book Spiritual Leadership. Most people who decide to grow personally find their first mentors in the pages of books. That is a great place to start. For that matter, it's a great place to continue. I am still learning from dozens of people every year that I will never meet. But at some point, you must find personal models too. If you follow only yourself, you will find yourself going in circles. Most people who decide to grow personally find their first mentors in the pages of books. I have had the privilege of connecting with many leaders whose modeling I have found worthy of imitation. People such as consultant Fred Smith, speaker Zig Ziglar, and coach John Wooden have helped me tremendously. Others, who looked better from a distance than they actually were when I got to know them, turned out to be disappointments. Which just goes to show that you must be selective when it comes to choosing mentors and models. I smile every time I think of the two derelicts sunning themselves on a park bench. The first guy said, "The reason I'm here is because I refused to listen to anyone." The second guy responded, "The reason I'm here is because I listen to everyone." Neither course of action is helpful. You must be selective in who you choose as a mentor. From both the positive and the negative experiences I've had with mentors, I have developed criteria to determine the worthiness of a model for me to follow. I share them with you in the hope that they will help you to make good choices for this area of your growth. 1. A good mentor is a worthy example. We become like the people we admire and the models we follow. For that reason, we should take great care when determining which people we ask to mentor us. They must not only display professional excellence and possess skill sets from which we can learn, they must also demonstrate character worthy of emulating. Many athletes, celebrities, politicians, and business leaders today try to disavow being any kind of role model when others are already following them and mimicking their behavior. They want people to separate their personal behavior from their professional life, but such a division cannot really be made. Religious leader and author Gordon B. Hinckley advised, "It is not wise, or even possible, to divorce private behavior from public leadership, though there are those who have gone to great lengths to suggest that this is the only possible view of enlightened individuals. They are wrong. They are deceived. By its very nature, true leadership carries with it the burden of being an example. Is it asking too much of any public officer, elected by his or her constituents, to stand tall and be a model before the people, not only in the ordinary aspects of leadership but in his or her behavior? If values aren't established and adhered to at the top, behavior down the ranks is seriously jeopardized and undermined. Indeed, in any organization where such is the case, be it a family, a corporation, a society, or a nation, the values being neglected will in time disappear. As you look for role models and mentors, scrutinize their personal lives as carefully as their public performance. Your values will be influenced by theirs, so you shouldn't be too casual who you choose to follow. 2. A good mentor is available. Steel magnate and philanthropist Andrew Carnegie said, "As I grow older I pay less attention to what men say. I just watch what they do. For us to be able to observe models up close and see what they do, we must have some contact with them. That requires access and availability. For us to be actively mentored, we must have time with people to ask questions and learn from their answers. As I grow older I pay less attention to what men say. I just watch what they do." Andrew Carnegie. When I mentor people, we usually meet officially only a few times a year. However, during the year we sometimes spend time together informally. Many of their mentoring questions are stimulated by my actions, not my words. That thought humbles me, because I know at times I fall short of the ideals and values that I teach. As I have often said, my greatest leadership challenge is leading me. Teaching people what to do is easy. Showing them is much more difficult. My greatest leadership challenge is leading me. The greatest piece of advice I can give in the area of availability is that when you are looking for a mentor, don't shoot too high too soon. If you're considering going into politics for the first time, you don't need the advice of the President of the United States. If you are a high school student thinking about learning to play the cello, you don't need to be mentored by Yo-Yo Ma. If you're fresh out of school and just starting your career, don't expect to get extensive mentoring time from the CEO of your organization. Why shouldn't I? You may be thinking. Why not start with the best? First of all, if you're just starting out, nearly all of your questions can be answered by someone 2 or 3 levels ahead of you, not 10. And their answers will be fresh because they will have recently dealt with the issues you're dealing with. Second, CEOs need to be spending their time answering the questions of the people who are on the verge of leading at their level. I'm not saying you should never go to the top. I'm saying spend the majority of your time being mentored by people who are available, willing, and suited for the stage of your career. And as you progress in your development, find new mentors for your new level of growth. 3. A good mentor has proven experience. The farther you go in the pursuit of your potential, the more new ground you will have to break. How do you figure out how to proceed? Benefit from others' experience. As the Chinese proverb says, to know the road ahead, ask those coming back. To know the road ahead, ask those coming back. Chinese proverb. In the early 1970s, when my church was growing rapidly, I realized I was moving into territory that I hadn't been in before, nor had anyone I knew. To help me figure out how to lead better in this new territory, I began to seek out successful church leaders in larger churches around the country. I've told the story many times of how I offered $100 to them for 30 minutes of their time. Many graciously agreed to meet with me. I'd go to the meeting armed with a legal pad full of questions and pick their brains. I can hardly explain how much I learned in those sessions. Every time I've entered into a new venture, I've sought the advice of people with proven experience. When I started my first business, I talked to successful businesspeople who could give me advice. When I wanted to write my first book, I sat at the feet of successful authors who could guide me. To learn to communicate more effectively, I studied communicators. Hearing about their bad experiences made me aware of potential problems I would be facing up the road. Hearing about their good experiences gave me an anticipation of potential opportunities up ahead of me. All leaders are influenced by those they admire. Reading about them and studying their traits inevitably allows an inspiring leader to develop his own leadership traits. Rudy Giuliani. I don't know of a successful person who hasn't learned from more experienced people. Sometimes they follow in their footsteps. Other times they use their advice to help them break new ground. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani says, "All leaders are influenced by those they admire." Reading about them and studying their traits inevitably allows an inspiring leader to develop his own leadership traits.